So I want to pin that on you because that's the right question. And I want
Yeah.
you to answer it honestly because he's asking the right question. How much of the news is wrong?
Well, I mean, I think if it's a proper news source and they are reporting facts, right? Like observable facts, then they're getting those right. The problem is that so much of news media isn't reporting facts, it's so much opinion. And when you start getting into the opinion, so much of that is just what's the word, conjecture, right? They're guessing. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes, just like you were saying. There's a lot of backroom conversations that are happening that the media will never see, right? What they see is what the governments want them to see. When the U.S. government or the government of France comes out and makes some kind of big like, oh, we're doing this now. Who knows what's really happening behind the scenes? Something is happening behind the scenes, but we won't never be privy to that until the next big announcement. You know.
So, and I just want to chime in because what Jihi said there is with the very professional, journalistically sound news sources,
Mhm.
what they report that's observable is factual. Well, we all know your journalistically sound news sources are increasingly shrinking. There's probably three that you can think of, right?
Yeah.
Like Reuters. I would say Reuters is journalistically sound. The
Yeah.
Economist is journalistically sound.
Do you think that one political party or another is better at providing a broader clarity as to what's happening, or they're equally culpable in their facade that they're presenting to the world?
Equally
Yeah.
culpable. Yeah, I do not think the political parties.
Until you've
Yeah.
been on Capitol Hill and actually watched these assholes yell at each other on camera and then have
Mhm.
lunch together and give fist bumps, you don't get it. It's so twisted and
So it's all
perverted.
Yeah.
theater.
It's all
It's
theater.
all theater.
And in the US government, it's all theater because at the end of the day, they all want the same thing.
Yep.
They all want a reelection, another term in office. They
Mhm.
all want to make sure that they don't have to go find a real job. They all want to make sure that they
Yeah.
can vote and control their own salaries. That's really what they want. And then they want
Yeah.
to make sure that any newcomers that come in understand this is how business is done.
Mhm.
And then the American people, we give them permission to do that because we only show up at like 30% to vote anyways. And they know that. So they know exactly who the 1 out of 3 people is that's going to show up to vote and exactly what to say to get that constituent to come out every midterm. And that's what they do when the time comes to do it. The other thing that I think is important to talk about is everybody is trapped in the middle of a gigantic information war. Yes, there's battlefield bullets and cannons and tanks, but there's also a massive informational war. The same narrative that you see these ground troops in Ukraine, these Russian ground troops in Ukraine, believing they're clearing the land of Nazis, that information is being fed to them from their own home country. I don't know why people seem to think that the information that they're reading in English is any more or less true. Every piece of news coming out of the West, every piece of information coming out in the English language is also a giant narrative being shared intentionally to try to undermine the morale and the faithfulness of English-speaking Russians, which somebody somewhere knows exactly how many of those there are. So we have to recognize that we're not getting true information from other side because there is a strategic value in making sure that there is just the right amount of mis or disinformation out there. Not because someone's trying to lie to Americans, but because someone is trying to influence the way English-speaking Russians think. And in that world, that's exactly why you see so many news articles cited to anonymous sources, government officials who do not want to be named. There's nothing that links back responsibility there, right? There's nothing that can go to court there. But the information still gets released, and that's enough to make Ukrainians believe that the United States is going to help them or that the West is going to help them. It's enough to make Russians think that they're going to lose, and maybe they should just give up now and leave from the battlefield now. We have to understand we are in the middle of a giant information war.
Maybe you can correct me, but it feels like in the English speaking world, it's harder to control. It's harder to fight the information war because of, some people say there's not really a freedom of speech in this country, but I think if you compare, there's a lot more freedom of speech. And it's just harder to control narratives when there's a bunch of guerrilla journalists that are able to just publish anything they want on Twitter or anything. It's just harder to control narratives.
So people don't understand what freedom of speech is. That's the first major problem. And it's shameful how many people in the United States do not understand what freedom of speech actually protects. So that aside, you're absolutely right. Fighting the information war in the West is extremely difficult because anyone with a blog, anyone with a Twitter account, anyone can call themselves a journalist, essentially. We live in a country where people read the headline and they completely bypass the author line and they go straight into the content. And then they decide whether the content's real or not based on how they feel instead of based on empirical, measurable evidence.